We actually had a case with one of the top 3 telcos who came to us looking for enhanced customer identification. We were actually able to help them identify 55 million of their own consumers.
Welcome to Powered by Snowflake, a series where I interview technology leaders building applications and businesses on Snowflake. I'm your host, Daniel Myers, and today I'm talking with Ryan Engle, VP of Identity Products at NuStar, a TransUnion company. NuStar is an identity solutions platform for marketing, risk, and communications use cases, powered by Snowflake. Ryan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks for joining me in the studio. And I want to learn more about your history at NuStar, kind of how you got involved there. And in your own words, tell me what makes NuStar different.
Yeah, sure. So I joined NuStar about 4 years ago. I joined to lead our known identity products, which is broadly anything using name, address, phone, email for marketing purposes. We really grew the business exponentially over the couple of years that I led the business. And we see platforms and partnerships as the new area of growth for us. And so we've been seeking partnerships with platforms like Snowflake, looking for ways to innovate, integrate, bring more value to our shared customers.
That's interesting. So what, for the audience today, what exactly is a identity solutions platform and why are you targeting communications and some of these specific use cases?
Customer identity is super important for a broad range of use cases. So if you're a financial services company and you're considering a new customer for yourself, then you'd want to understand as they're applying for a new account, well, is this person who they say they are? Do I trust them? And so on. And so there are risk and fraud use cases. As a communication service provider, you want to initiate a new phone number, register with a person, and so on. Identity is at the core of that. NuStar powers more than 90% of caller ID in the US, for example. Like, identity is everywhere. And I think what's unique about NuStar is that all of the different use cases that we fulfill, including marketing, which is what we're going to be talking about mostly today, are all powered by the same one identity graph. So it's called One ID, which is the graph to kind of rule them all that, in industries with risk and fraud use cases, communication solutions where the bar for accuracy is really high, we're using that same data to power our marketing business as well. That's
pretty exciting to see. I mean, and pretty insightful on how you're able to match these IDs across various channels and various sources so you have that one true identity.
Yep.
Tell me more about, how you're doing that from an architectural perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I'll speak to my business in particular because, as I mentioned, identity is sort of spanning the range of business cases. And for each of those, we'll have a different product solution. But the one we're bringing to Snowflake is the identity management solution, which I'm responsible for. It's fulfilling on a number of client use cases, but it's really identity resolution on a customer data set, identity resolution and enrichment, just to provide some context on how that works. A client of ours would have their own data environment where they have their first-party data set, for example, a CRM database and so on. They want to get more value out of that data. And so they'll partner with a company like NuStar to pass that data to us via some file sharing mechanism, either record by record API or in a batch process like Snowflake or AWS or so on. And NuStar will take that data, use the data from our graph, our identity graph, and the proprietary matching algorithms and things that we have that are matching IP to resolve the identity, help our clients deduplicate their records, help enrich with additional points of contact, demographic enrichment, and so on, and we'll pass that data back to them. I think the main challenge with that we've encountered is some clients just don't like to share data outside their 4 walls, right? And it's a legitimate, especially in highly regulated industries like financial services or healthcare. And so we've been looking for the opportunity to take our identity resolution to our clients directly in their environment to prevent that data transfer. And that's what Snowflake allows us to do.
That is pretty incredible. And I think, you mentioned the idea that a lot of your customers don't want their data to leave their environment. I hear that a lot myself. Can you talk about what it is that you are building to make that happen?
Yeah, sure. We built a really sophisticated identity resolution app within Snowflake using the native application framework that's just been launched at Summit. So what we've done really is taken our proprietary graph, which is industry-leading identity graph with billions of rows of identity clusters and everything, which we would never give access to that to our clients because that's our bread and butter, right? That's the one ID that powers all of the marketing and risk and communications use cases we spoke about before. We take that data, put it into Snowflake, and then we take our application, put it in Snowflake as well. Again, we wouldn't ever want to share that proprietary matching capability with our clients or competitors. But luckily, with the native app framework, we don't have to. And so what we do is we provide a view of that application, which provides a view into our graph, which allows customers to get all of the value out of our services without ever having to share their PII with us. And that we can see how many records they query. We're able to run our business without ever seeing their data as well.
I love that you mentioned native apps. Like you said, we announced it at Summit earlier this year. And I think one of the cool things that you mentioned about native apps is that it ensures, programmatically guarantees that data does not leave your customer's environment. And in reality, what that means is it's giving them the control over their own data, right? So that's a pretty powerful statement.
Just one additional benefit I wanted to mention beyond the data never leaving the client's environment. Another thing that's nice about Snowflake is there's a colleague of mine, Steve Silvers, likes to use the word automagically, where it's the data resides in the platform. It calls our data anytime we refresh our data, keep it up to date. All of that just automatically feeds into the client environment, keeps their data as fresh as possible and as accurate as possible.
Can you tell me more about where and how do they access this application? How do they install it? And can we see a demo of it today?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. All right. So what I've done is I've pulled up a client environment. In this case, we've created a customer account called NuStar Acme. In the client account, you go to the private sharing screen, and what you'll see is we, in our NuStar provider account, have shared our native application with the customer in the consumer account. And so they can see the application here, and they can also see we've licensed our data appends product, which we'll highlight as part of the demo as well. But rather than sharing the install scripts and everything, which maybe not as interesting for folks, we'll switch straight to how a client invokes the application within their consumer account. I'm a data person. NuStar is a data company. We provide the best identity resolution capabilities. There will be hundreds of millions of records which are being transferred between us and our customers. What we're highlighting today is really to try and bring that to life with single record examples to sort of highlight specific use cases or examples to bring it to life for the audience. And the first thing I wanted to highlight, which we spoke about before, is we are sharing our graph with our customers, but we don't want our customers to be able to see our graph. So just as an example, if a client tried to view the contents of our graph, they get a compilation error. Likewise, we don't want to share the matching IP within our application.
Right.
So if clients of ours were to try and find out how the application works, again, they get an error. What they are able to do, though, is to use the application for what it's intended to do, which is identity resolution and enrichment.
It's pretty powerful to see how it protects both your IP and your customer's IP in the same environment.
Yep. It's really important. Now, for customers who have a legitimate identity use case, we have gotten the permission from a colleague of mine, Jason Beyer, to use his information for the sake of the demo. I wanted to highlight one specific use case, which is data duplication, right? So we have, for example, one of the biggest retailers in the US, who's a client of ours who has hundreds of millions of customer records within their CRM. They have very high levels of duplication. Our capability helped reduce their records by hundreds of millions, right? Even when they were working with a CDP to do identity stitching and so on, NuStar was still able to identify an additional 20% of records that were duplicates. So there's a lot of waste. Plus, it's hard to really understand your customer lifetime value if you don't understand all the transactions or all the touch points you have with a particular customer. So for this example, what you'll notice is we have two records. The first one where Jason was in a hurry and he had a typo. So he typed his name as Jason Beyer, and we have one phone number here. And the second example although Jason doesn't go by by a nickname, let's assume that he goes by the nickname JB. And so the second time he was interacting with a brand, you gave them his name of JB, you gave them a different email and a different phone number. We'll run these two records separately to see the results that we get. So with the first record, we get a bunch of information here. The most important part is the E key, which is NuStar's language for our persistent individual identifier.
Okay.
So this identifier is 99.5% persistent month over month. If you're trying to get a long time view of a customer, this is how you do it. So you can see the persistent key for Jason is 2780, etc. We've made a note of it here in the comments. There's also a household ID, and there's a bunch of information about the quality of the information which has been submitted. Is this a high scoring first name that's associated with this account, etc. We don't have to get into that today. But if we note the persistent key, so who Jason is, then the second query we'll run is with JB, his nickname. Then we'll notice that even though the PII is different, even though the first one had a typo, the second one has a nickname, the results that we get back are consistent. And so you'll see the E key here, again, NuStar's persistent key is the same number, from the use case 1 or the record.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, even looks like the phone number is different too.
Yep.
And I think that one is a powerful way to have that global unified ID of different folks, while at the same time providing the secure nature of data not leaving the customer's environment, while at the same time providing protection to your IP, which is the matching technology, right?
That's right.
So Ryan, this has been a really interesting demo. Can you tell me and kind of show me, how does something like this really enable collaboration amongst the data?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really important point, especially at Summit. Snowflake was talking a lot about native apps and a lot about clean rooms. So that's one particularly powerful use case of an application like ours. So here we're still in the consumer account who has, Jason's record plus, hundreds of millions of other records potentially. They've keyed up their accounts with our persistent key, and now they want to create a view of their data to share with a partner. And so what they can do is create a custom share. Here we see some examples of the NuStar's persistent key, our household ID, and you can see that maybe this is a publisher, right, who can share that their customer's specific favorite content is sports and cooking, etc. They want to share this data with an advertiser. In this case, it's a financial services company who does the same thing to run, a database with NuStar's persistent key using a native app. They create a view of their database. In this case, they're willing to share specific account attributes like this is, a credit card user versus home loan, etc. So what the clients can do together, just based on that same persistent key, is then basically do a share or a join between those. And then what you'll get back is a combination of the advertiser data set, those financial services attributes we spoke about, with the publisher data sets, the favorite attributes. And so that's a simple join between two customers, but you could do as many as you wanted. So assuming there's a partner B who had some purchase information, you can use this same persistent key to resolve and stitch together the data across partner data sets. It's important, though, that it's all the stitching of those identity fragments we spoke about at the beginning, all the misspellings, all the incorrect address information, all of that. It's really making sense of that, getting it to the persistent key, which then makes it super easy to do a share across customers in that use case.
Yeah, that really seems like a powerful mechanism for that collaboration, and really a flexible way to make it work pretty seamlessly.
Absolutely.
So that's really cool. Tell me more about, why and really how the process went for choosing Snowflake to be the platform that you build this on.
Yeah, sure. I think we have a multi-cloud strategy for our identity products. And as I mentioned, while we experience exponential growth on sort of our core business, there's a much bigger ocean out there in terms of the clients who partner with companies like with Snowflake. As we were considering partners with whom we wanted to work, it was really important for us to both have those capabilities that we were talking about, the private sharing that protects our IP, in addition to protecting the customer account. One thing we haven't spoken about is the protection of the individual consumer as well. Jason Buyer, hey, his records aren't being sent around all over the place. That's good for him too, right? Snowflake is able to provide all of those benefits. I think also that in our experience, our clients are very keen on our relationship with Snowflake. We work with 70% of the Fortune 100. We work with all the major banks, all the major telcos. As part of TransUnion, every financial services, company is a client of ours. And companies who take privacy and security really seriously like to partner with a company like Snowflake, just given the credentials you have in the space.
That's really interesting to hear. I mean, it sounds like it's a combination of features and capabilities and the ecosystem that Snowflake plays in, right? You mentioned that a lot of folks, you need that type of integration that your customers already use Snowflake in some way, possibly, right? And so it makes it easier to adopt it. So that's really cool to hear. Can you tell me more about kind of how you went about implementing this on Snowflake? You mentioned that you are part of the private preview for native apps.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me more about kind of your experience there and how you've implemented it thus far?
Yeah, I think that's one additional benefit that we've experienced as part of this process. When Snowflake first introduced API integrations for the data marketplace, we were one of the first to integrate over there. When the native application became an option, then again, we're among the very first here. We're keen to align ourselves with Snowflake's product roadmap because that benefits both Snowflake and the broader marketplace, but it also benefits our business. Our experience so far with Snowflake has been terrific because we're among the first using the application, we're getting a lot of support from the technical teams. We're identifying bugs, right? We're very much on the leading edge of things, but the team has been super responsive in helping us problem solve. I know that we had a dependency on our application needed to be written in Java and Scala as opposed to Python. And so the team expedited that for us to make that possible. So really, it's been a really positive experience so far.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear. And I think, having kind of that joint go-to-market kind of engagement with Snowflake is a pretty powerful tool. Can you tell me about kind of what's next? What should your customers get excited about over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, sure. I think for right now, there's a lot of green space for the sort of core capability we spoke about, right? So identity deduplication, that's a pretty straightforward use case. I think there are a lot of other use cases which the capability unlocks. Is it all right if I share a few with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So this is all possible today. So I know you asked about, 6, 12 months, but I just want to highlight sort of the power of this single persistent ID. While it's simple, it unlocks a lot of value for our customers, which I expect we'll grow into with them over that period of time, in addition to bringing other data sets to bear. But for now, we'll just focus on the use case that we had with Jason. In this case, the client just had, the name and phone, name, email, and a different phone. Let's assume that instead they have they wanted to send Jason a direct mail campaign, but they don't have any way of mailing Jason because they don't have his address or any other information about him. So by licensing the append product that we shared at the beginning, the client is able to use that persistent key we had before from Jason. So you see that same number here. And now what we've identified is his name isn't actually Jason, is Jason, right? We have the phone numbers that you provided. We have a new email address, so a new way of contacting, and also his street address, for example. We actually had a case with one of the top 3 telcos who came to us looking for enhanced customer identification. We were actually able to help them identify 55 million of their own consumers.
Wow.
They have direct billing relationships with customers and they didn't know who they were, right? Whereas with our identity graph, we're able to take those phone numbers, take them outside of the family plans, connect them to the other data we have and say, hey, this is Ryan. It's not, a member of the Johnstone Engle family, for example.
That's impressive. That's really cool to see.
And then the last use case is, okay, you have Jason, you have new ways to reach him. How are you sure that you're going to reach him with the most relevant message? And so the other thing that we can do is use that same persistent key to enable a share to provide demographic enrichment. So for example, Jason has 3 kids living in his house. We won't share any of the additional demographic information we have here, but education, marital status, we have hundreds of columns of additional information, which provide a rich picture of who a consumer is and how to best segment and target them with advertising, or potentially, how to, we have some customers who use this to monetize their own retail media networks, for example. Like, hey, here's the audience that you have among my customers, and here's what they look like.
So in a solution like this, in that previous example that you showed, right, with the person's name Jason, how do you define or decide which name is the typo and which name is the real one?
Right. So in NuStar's identity graph, we have a combination of authoritative data sets. Think of them as truth sets, right? Not publicly available direct billing relationships are in there. There's a whole combination of data sets, which without giving away the secret sauce, right? But there's authoritative data sets, and then you have third-party data sets as well to sort of help with reach and so on. I think that's pretty typical for competitors of NuStar. What makes NuStar different, though, is that we also have access to privileged data sets as a result of the other lines of business that we support. For example, as the provider of caller ID, which I mentioned before, we see all the phone calls which are taking place.
Yeah.
That gives you a lot of information about, is this phone active? If so, at what time of day? Is it associated with this person or so on? And so we have access to information there that our competitors don't. And also we have specific relationships with partners who provide their data sets with, again, like high fidelity, direct billing relationships to inform the graph, which really differentiates NuStar to be able to say, like, is it Jason or Jason? Well, like it's Jason over here, but it's Jason and, 200 other examples. Like, we're going to stick with Jason.
So that's really cool to hear. And it seems like leveraging kind of the first party data where you're able to get it is a strong indicator to what the real data should be.
Yeah, we have machine learned models, right? That it's all about frequency, accuracy, but also the validity of the data or the strength of that data and quality of the data that factors into that as well. So I mentioned there were billions of rows of identity clusters. Some of those are Jason, some of them are JB, some of them are Jason. And we say, okay, all of those are related, right? But Jason is the one.
And so Ryan, for people that want to learn more about you or about NuStar, where should they go?
Sure. For me, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. For NuStar, the best place to go is our website, home.nustar. Or now that we're part of TransUnion, you can visit transunion.com.
That's great. And I want to say a big thank you for joining me in the studio today. It's been great having you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. It's been fun.
And thank you to everyone watching. To see more interviews like this with tech leaders building applications on Snowflake, check out our other videos on YouTube and subscribe for new episodes. My name is Daniel Myers, and this has been another episode of Powered by Snowflake.